Hi, everybody. Welcome. We've been asked a lot on how to do these multi-agent workflows. They're really powerful, work very well in some of the modern tools like Claude and Codex. I'm going to share real quickly how to do one in Claude. So I'll share my screen and show you the new tool from Claude called Claude Co-Work. And it's one of the many tools that you can use to do this. All right, so this is Claude Co-Work. And Claude Co-Work is a tool, it's a software program you download from the Claude website. It actually runs on your computer locally as opposed to the web version that you can just run in your web browser. So Claude Co-Work, you download it. You have to have a paid version of Claude. The free version does not include Co-Work. So the $20 and up, you can use Co-Work. When you first install it, you'll see on your left here, it says chat. But then you have an option called Co-Work. Co-Work is different than chat because Co-Work has the brains of Claude behind it. But in addition, it allows you to access files and folders on your computer. It also lets you schedule and automate things and do some of the parallel workflows like we're going to do now. And you can see I've got a prompt loaded here that says, help me create a multi-agent recruiting committee using these 5 distinct personas. I want each agent to run in its own parallel work stream. This is very important. And review every CV from the point of view of the attached personas only. When done, each agent will give its feedback to the recruitment coordinator, Rajesh Kumar, who will then present a summary back to me. So I've given names to each of these personas just to make them more usable. For the first run, do not run the persona of Nancy. I'll explain who Nancy is in a minute until I ask you to run the second run. Please connect to a folder on my desktop called Recruitment Committee. And when asked, look inside the folder for any new CVs that are presented to be analyzed. When found, compare that CV that's in the inbox to the job description in the folder called Job Pack. Lastly, all of the personas will be in the folder called personas. Now I'm going to send this, but while it's working, I'm going to show you what my folder structure looks like. I have a folder on my desktop called Recruiting Committee, and in it, I have a number of folders. And you can see here, I've got an inbox in which sits a CV for somebody named Aisha Patel, somebody who's applied for the job. Then I have another folder called Job Pack in which there's a job description for this job. And last but not least, I have a folder called Personas. And you'll see I have multiple personas in here, including, we'll open the one for Emily. So Emily's recruiting this from a CFO's point of view. Emily looks at the world through the eyes of a CFO. And I'll open the markdown file to show you what it looks like. But here we go. Emily Johnson, you see CFO reviewer. She's CFO of XYZ Pharmaceuticals. She reviews CVs from the point of view of capital, discipline, and so on. So it explains a little bit about XYZ. It's a mid-sized specialty company headquartered in Boston, 680 million in revenue. Then it says Emily is a 46-year-old, worked for KPMG, did an MBA to Wharton, biotech and finance. You think of every hire as a capital allocation decision. A senior hire at this company will cost the company between one and a half and $3 million after you load in all the different things that go along with it. So in other words, Emily sees this as an important financial impact. She wants to make sure the company's making the right financial decision about hiring this person. Now, there's a lot more detail. You're warm in person and ruthless on paper. She's very sharp-minded, very demanding in her job. You believe deeply in numbers or a forcing function. So you can see this goes on and on, talking about how she looks at it from a point of view of a finance person. And then she has final couple things. She looks for a few things, big claims, no numbers, a pattern of jumping before results land, etc. And then there's an instruction on how I want Emily to write her review. When you get the CV, you should write your report by giving your name, the name of the candidate, what your verdict is up front. I want to see, are you saying hire or don't hire? And then a one-line takeaway of what you think about the candidate. Then a few more things, what numbers you'd like to see, what questions you'd like to ask, and then we say what the tone of the person is. So you saw from my inbox, I have multiple personas. The CEO comes at it from a CEO point of view. Maria comes at it from a R&D point of view. Jamal is coming at it from an HR point of view. So these people, each one has a very distinct persona. And this is really important because in a company, you can imagine having people interview a candidate and each one has their own point of view. And then they kind of fight it out afterwards. They argue the pros and the cons. And in the end, we end up with a blended picture. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have the head of HR interview the candidate and only the head of HR and say, but would you think about it also from the point of view of the CFO and also think about it from the point of view of the CEO? Well, first, they're not going to do a good job because they don't know those jobs as well. And second, their persona is going to prevail. It's the same thing with AI. If you blend all these into one chat and you say, hey, take all these into consideration when you're reviewing the CV, you're going to get a blended, non-optimal solution. Whereas running these agents in parallel means we're going to end up with a great result because it's running each one in isolation, and then the feedback comes in, and then we can compare them to each other. So let's see what Claude's doing. And here we go. Claude's asking to access this folder on my desktop. I'm going to say allow. It's now going to look at my folder structure. It's going to see that it's got their personas. It's going to see it's got the job description. This is great because Claude has multiple safeguards to prevent me from making mistakes. So it's asking me to allow multiple times. Don't do this at your root directory. Don't do this at some place where you're going to have some issue. So I can just choose a folder where I want Claude to work, and I'll just say on my desktop, and I'll say in my recruitment committee for now, and I'll say select that folder. Now, in reality, you probably want to have Claude running in a separate directory, but for this example, I'm doing it. So now it's connected, it's looking at the structure, it's looking at the job pack, and now basically it's ready to run. If I say check my inbox, it's going to read that CV, it's going to now go ahead and run that committee in parallel, and it's going to give me a consolidated report back with a recommendation as to whether or not to hire. Now, I did mention one final step. Remember, I mentioned Nancy. So here's Nancy. Nancy, I sometimes call negative Nancy. Nancy's job is to look at everything from a skeptical point of view. Nancy is going to challenge you on the numbers, say why this is not a good idea, really hold you accountable. And this is important because, as we know, AI tends to be too agreeable, too friendly. So with Nancy, you can ask Nancy basically to shoot holes in everybody else's arguments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the committee run once, just unfiltered, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to share Nancy's feedback back with the committee to see if it changes their mind. So here we go. It found the CV, it's running it, and it's been going ahead and reading. And so what it's going to end up with is a report back to me that will say, okay, this CV is for a candidate who is well qualified. However, our recommendation is X. Perhaps you should hire them immediately. Perhaps you should interview them first. Perhaps you should not hire them. So let's wait and see what happens. Okay, so you can see it's running those 5 agents in parallel. They are the CEO, the CFO, and you can see on the right side of the screen is showing me what's going on, dispatching the 5 reviewers in parallel, verify all 5 reviews, synthesize the report, and then report back to Mark. And you can see on the right all the different files it's used in running this process for me. It's got at the bottom here, we can see it's got the CV for Aisha Patel, the job description, and it's ready for me to use Nancy when I ask for it. Okay, so the first run is done, and you can see here on the left telling me what it did. It says all 5 reviews are in, rich in character, they converge with a genuine split, the pattern deep on asset science and rare kill decision credential. So higher on the strength of clean tenure, but now Rajesh is gone and he's written his summary. And so basically say, one by one, Michael Lee says we need to interview first. This is the report that you're going to get in your inbox. What the verdict. So these people are saying what they saw in this candidate, what's missing, and then other candidates the team should also be considering if you have multiple CVs. 3 questions I'd like to ask in an interview. This is really useful if you're actually going to be proceeding to interviews with people. What the committee will probably miss. So remember, I asked it to hold itself accountable to make sure it didn't get things done. And then what would change my mind. So that's one of the examples there. You can see here, it gave me 1 for each person. So I've got 1 for the CEO, 1 for the CFO, and finally 1 for Rajesh Kumar. Now I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's run it with the point of view of Nancy. Let's have Nancy have a look now, and then, okay, and then give her feedback to the other committees. Sorry, to other committee members, and see if they change their minds. Give me a final report. And so that's going to run for a few more minutes again. Now, what's nice about these multi-agent things is since literally it's launching a separate context window, a separate memory instance for each one of those personas. And that way we're getting unadulterated feedback from each one. It'll take a few minutes when you do it, but you go and do something else. You open another window on your computer and you wait. And these agents are off working for you the same way a real team would be. So let's wait and see what the feedback is. Okay, so we're back. So Nancy had her review as expected. She was negative, and you can see here Nancy's verdict: insufficient evidence to justify continuing. So she was so unimpressed, she didn't think there's any point in even continuing to have a conversation. Whereas the rest of the committee was swayed a little bit, and they said, look, some went from hire to interview first. Maria is now a no hire. Jamal had been a hire before. Now he's like, okay, need to interview first. And so then Michael says no hire unless comparators are run first. And you can see here the full report on the right. So this has been very useful. By the way, all of those reports will be in the folder. So all those reports go into a folder. You can see it here in my folder on my desktop. First of all, you have the report. This is a consolidated report that Rajesh Kumar sends to us. It's in a markdown file. And then we also have the individual reviews. So if you wanted to, you could go in. There's a folder, by the way, for each candidate you interview. But you can see here, if I just wanted to read what Emily, the CFO, has to say in her review, I could read that. So really useful. One last thing before we wrap up. Just want to show you, if you find this useful, you could turn this into a permanent skill. Here's my prompt. Thanks. Now let's turn this into a skill that I can launch anytime I have new CVs. When I say, please launch a recruiting committee, that's your cue to look in the inbox folder for CVs and launch the entire process. So I'm setting a wake word or a launch word. Next time you can automatically do 2 passes, so no need to ask me before doing Nancy. First pass with the 5 committee members, and the second one we get Nancy's input and share it back with the committee. Just tell me when it's done. So you can imagine I could put 10 CVs in that folder, say, hey, look at my inbox, or please launch a recruiting committee. It's going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go off and have some lunch, come back. I'm going to find 5 or 10 reports sitting there ready for me to review and see which people I should interview. I hope you found this to be useful. Send us comments or questions if you have any need for anything else. Many thanks for watching.